We are live. Hi, I'm Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred live stream. This is our third live stream. And I am, like I say, the last previous show, I'm beyond stoked for tonight's show. I have two great, awesome guests, and I cannot wait to see what roads we go down and navigate through tonight. This is going to be a super exciting show. Just a couple house cleaning things. First of all, the podcast that I post on Fridays, the one coming up tomorrow actually is going to be with my brother Steve. And that's an interesting show because Steve's a professional musician. He plays for one of the largest Elton John tribute bands down in the St. Louis area. And we talk a lot about music and about how therapeutic it can be and how songs can help us deal with trauma and adversity that we have in our lives. So that's going to be a great show. And then the second thing is I have an absolutely huge mega project in the works. It's so big that I can't tell you about it tonight. So you're going to have to follow my story a little bit more. This project I'm on, I've stumbled onto recently. And one beautiful thing with ADD is when you get into something, you just can't stop. Well, that's what this project's doing to me. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be in 2022. I'm going to take quite a few months to plan for this, but when it comes out, it's going to be the biggest thing that we've ever done here at the Living Undeterred Project. And everybody that's in my life, all the people that have been podcast guests, interviews I've had, even the two people tonight on my show are going to be part of this journey that I'm putting together. So with that, let's introduce the guest tonight. We have an awesome first guest. I'm going to introduce Danielle McLean. She is, and both these people have been friends of mine for what seems like since high school, but it's only been about 3 months, which is absolutely insane with the way social media is today, how well and intimately you get to know people, but you've actually never even shook their hands. So Danielle, welcome to the show. And your story is beyond inspirational, beyond living undeterred. And the followers and viewers today are going to be very grateful to have the opportunity to hear your story today. So Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was a very nice intro. Thanks everybody for having me here. So my name is Danielle McLean. I run a small startup called Happy Takeoff. Before starting Happy Takeoff, I had a bumpy past, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But for now, I'll just say that I met Jeff from a video that I posted on LinkedIn. I had this big fear as an entrepreneur that people were going to find out these horrible things about my past and they weren't going to want to do business with me. And it just kept haunting me. So I just said, screw it. And I basically just told my life in 60 seconds. And it was very therapeutic. And actually nobody judged me from it. I haven't had one negative thing happen to it. Doors just started opening and I met Jeff that way. And so many people were supportive. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, I'm just so happy to be here. I'm really excited to be meeting David as well. And I'm excited to see what kind of craziness we'll get into tonight.
Thanks, Danielle. And David, I don't know where to start with you either, man. You just kind of drifted in from above into my life. And I have been just really honored to follow your story. You sent me a stack of autographed books that I donated off to my charity golf tournament, the Living Undeterred Charity Golf Classic. And again, both of you feel like old friends, old souls. And to think I've loaned you guys for, 90 days is just, it's beautiful. And it's also intriguing because think how much more we can do together after, 9 years of doing this stuff. And David, I'll let you introduce yourself, but your story is awesome as well. I've seen so many videos of you on YouTube back in your modeling days. Your story is an inspirational story as well. You've had heartache and heartbreak in your life. And here you are, motivational coach, life coach, best-selling author. Both of you wonderful humans are doing awesome things. And I'm really excited about going through this tonight. So David, do you want to give a little bio about yourself before I throw out a softball question for you too?
It's absolutely. Danielle, awesome to meet you as well. And I'm looking forward to your story. I really am. And Jeff, you are a favorite. My fiance, Mia, and I always talk about the last couple of shows we've done. And she loves you. She loves your energy. I love you. I love your energy. You know, so when T reached out to TJ and said, hey, can we do this again? It was like, are you kidding me? We'll move a mountain. We'll move a mountain for Jeff because, you know, we believe in the messages that you're sharing. I mean, my background is pretty interesting in some ways, I guess you could say. 30-year alcoholic, cocaine addict, doing the work I'm doing right now. You know, waking up from that only to find out I had another unknown addiction called codependency and intimate relationships. Oh my God, you know, that was 1997. So the 90s were a huge year. We just celebrated 42 years in business, you know, as a counselor and a coach and an author and everything else that you said, Jeff. And, you know, just excited because this is the time. Undeterred. Are you kidding me? I mean, we need this more than anything. And I always encourage people, you know, get the hell off of network news. Just get off of it completely and tune into people like Jeff, who's making a difference in this world in a positive way. Get out of mass consciousness, get out of the insanity of being a follower, be a leader like Jeff and Danielle. And you can learn how to be a leader by paying more attention to podcasts like Jeff's, you know, and I'm just going to stop right now because we've got a lot to go over. But, you know, hats off, Jeff, to you, what the hell you've gone through, what you've overcome, my brother. Unbelievable. So I just want to thank you both for having me a part of the program, and let's kick some butt.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm really excited about this. I think I'll throw out there the word vulnerability. You know, when I go through and I meet Danielle, and I have a copy of the post that she made, and I just took a picture of it, Danielle. If you don't mind, I want to read this. It's pretty short.
Yeah,
but this is what lured me into her life, because I was so in awe and admiring her vulnerability, because I was doing the same thing. I was on social media talking about our son who died from heroin, and, you know, just continually talking about our cause and journey. And in a way, I realized I was becoming too vulnerable, and there is a risk of being too vulnerable. So let me read this. And Danielle, this was I don't know exactly when you posted this, but you said it was kind of like taking the mask off, you know? And I read this, and I remember the friend of mine who shared this, because this was actually a share I saw from John Statmuller. He had never met you. And I think I called him up and said, who is this? I want to meet her. I mean, her story sounds like the type of people I want to be around every day. And so here it is. This is the bravest thing I've ever done. My heart is beating out of my chest typing this in a good way. For decades, I've carried around so much shame and fear due to the choices that I made early in life. This led to massive imposter syndrome and severe depression. I'm finally giving myself permission to be free of that bondage and fly like the free bird I know I am. I am so very grateful for, and I won't name the person, for giving me the courage to let go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope this helps somebody out there. And like 30,000 likes later, you know, and Danielle, that really is how I heard about you. I talked to you, and then you told me about, and I do want to preface this by saying that this will be a fairly raw show today. To get to comfort, we have to go through discomfort. And Danielle, I don't think there's any boundaries today. I think you're comfortable talking about what happened to you. Some of us are comfortable peeling back the layers and talking about things. Some of us aren't, but you felt compelled to, in a way, I think. So feel free to share your story and kind of where it started, what happened, and then what you did with adversity in your life is just amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So that post, what I wrote, I also attached with it a video, and in that video, it was a 60-second video. And I said, and this is all true. When I was a teenager, I was raped, I was abused, I was beat. I became a single mom, a stripper, a prostitute, and spent decades being depressed and suicidal, drinking and on drugs. And in my 30s, I finally decided, you know, I wanted to change my life around, got sober, went to college, got an engineering degree, became an aerospace engineer, got my dream job as an aerospace engineer, left my dream job as an aerospace engineer. Now I'm the CEO of my own aerospace company. And thank you. And in that, you know, and then I think I ended it with, I did this, so can you, or something like that. And, you know, the point was, I I had all these stories in my head. Like, yeah, I made some bad choices, and yeah, some bad stuff happened to me, but nobody was judging me as rough as I was judging myself. And I was preventing myself from being authentic with people because I had such a guard about what if they find out who I used to be. And it was making it hard for me to connect with people. And I'm always like an all or nothing kind of girl. And so I just said, you know what, I'm just going to put it all out there. And it's actually helped me so much, because now everybody that I connect with, I have that pinned on every one of my profiles on social media. So before they even email me or connect with me, they already know that about me. And so it's like any of those questions you might have about any of my weird quirks or whatever I do, you kind of know like the history there. And it's just opened up so many doors. So yeah, I mean, and vulnerability, you know, well, a couple of things resonated. David, you said you were struggling with codependency. That's something that was probably the last thing that I kind of discovered about myself as well, and how much stemmed from being codependent. And not knowing I was codependent was kind of mind blowing. But, you know, there is a balance between being vulnerable and then not getting taken advantage of, especially being codependent. If you're too vulnerable, you know, as being codependent, we want to people please. And so people can kind of take advantage. And so kind of finding that dance where, Brene Brown said it best. And she said, the way to, how did she say? I think she said the way to prevent ever getting angry at somebody is to have really good boundaries. Yeah. Meaning, like, I don't have to worry about somebody taking advantage of me if I have those really good boundaries ahead of time. And that doesn't mean I have to be mean or rude or, you know, inauthentic, but, you know, it's like, these are the things that I'm not okay with, and reminding myself often what those boundaries are. Because sometimes we forget because we go back into old programming, right? And so just always, you know, saying, these are the things that I stand for. These are the things that I don't allow. And then just always going back to them. So anyway, that's my story. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if on your live streams you get questions or.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And I actually, Molly just put out here, anyone has questions for you too. You know, I think the key is in this whole thing, guys, is less about, and I hate to say this because my story is so addictive. You know, I love talking about my son, Seth, even though it involves, you know, him dying, but I love him more now. And I'm no less a dad just because he's not here. So, but I've learned to dial it back. I've learned not to be so in people's face. So Dave, let me ask you something, David, as kind of the expert, you know, on the panel here in regards to, you know, what you do day to day. How did Danielle make that pivot? How did she make that from all those things that most people would just probably end their life to going back to college, getting an engineering degree, and not just stopping there, but then being the CEO of her own engineer? It's an amazing story. How does someone like Danielle do that, David?
You know, Danielle, what a rock star. I love it. You know, in my work of 42 years, I've worked with prostitutes. I've worked with escorts, you know, just a higher level, right? Different name, higher level. You know, we've worked with everything in the world. And the vulnerability, I want to first mention vulnerability, then I want to mention the transition that Danielle, that me, that Jeff, that everyone makes when you're able to hurdle those things that so many people don't think they could ever hurdle. But first, with vulnerability, you know, we have to be super careful. We have 3 people on here with a lot of experience. We have 3 people on here that are not of the average public. And so the 3 of us have learned to be vulnerable. And what Jeff said is sometimes we take it too far. It's absolutely true. What I recommend when people overcome some huge things like, Jeff, what you've overcome, Danielle, what you've overcome, myself, et cetera, is that we really have to sit for, I believe, a couple years before we start to speak, or before we start to spread the message of what we've gone through and overcome. Because, you know, once we overcome it, we can get this rush we call in addiction recovery the pink cloud, you know, where we think that we've got it and we're going to nail it. Now we're going to share it with the world. But too many times that can send us backwards into a spiral when we're not ready to do something that Danielle said, and that is to not be codependent, to not worry about what anyone else thinks or says. There's a huge difference between overcoming massive life challenges and being ready for the attack. or being ready for the derision. You know, that's going to happen. Listen, there's a lot of people that do not like David Essel. Up until 1997, it mattered. It doesn't matter. You know, I really don't care. I believe that our work is profoundly powerful, but it doesn't mean if someone thinks that, you know, I'm Joe Schmo, that's fine. That's their opinion. It doesn't matter to me. But I really wanted to go back to that thing about vulnerability. Vulnerability is everything. It's the reason the three of us are together. It's the reason we connect spiritually, which we are connecting spiritually right now. Mm-hmm. Whether you like that word or not, it's happening. The way that we interact with each other, you know, the smile on Danielle's face when I said hi, the way Jeff introduced us both, you know, we're very open and we're very real, but it took us a while, I'm assuming, at least for me, it surely did. And I try to slow my clients down. You know, I tell them that if they're in a pathway with me of recovery, that not to say a word to anyone for at least 365 days, not a damn word. Your partner, yes. Your family, yes, but not. Right. And I'll give you a classic example of what happens when you do it too soon. A couple of years ago, I was working with an individual from the West Coast. I'm not going to mention gender or anything like that. Obviously, I'd be in a lot of trouble with the position that I have. But this individual came with 25 years of incredible alcoholism, highly functioning, making a lot of money, but just an absolute wreck of a human being. And we got him at 90 days into finally being 90 days clear, 90 days clean. He thinks he's got it made. And the very first thing he does, I shouldn't say, is post.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Post after 90 days, 20 years of a ridiculous background. And within 90 days posting, within 110 days relapse. And that's what happens when you're not grounded and you want to be vulnerable. I mean, the intentions were fine. He was guided never to do this. And he got so overly excited. He was riding that pink cloud. For people that don't know what it means, the pink cloud is when we think we're further ahead in our recovery than we actually are. You know, and we all go through it. We all think, oh my God, I've been clean for 30 days. I've got it made, you know, and 90% of people that have that attitude are going to relapse. Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is about vulnerability. Be super careful. Work with professionals before you make a post on social media, before you speak and you start talking about, you know, something like what Danielle went through, the 7,000 things she overcame to become who she is today. You know, really slow down. The second part of the question I want to answer that Jeff just, you know, how did Danielle do it? Well, Danielle did it the way that all of us do it. Yeah. She reached a personal bottom. Right. And at that personal bottom, she made a choice. And I want to make a comment about a bottom. A bottom is only a choice. You don't have to lose everything to hit a bottom. If you want to, you can. Right. That's our choice. You know, but, you know, someone at 16 with their first hangover and they make a choice. I'll never drink again. That was their bottom, their first hangover. Yeah. Other people can go through 5 DUIs, lose their license for life, and get one of my former clients got a 6th DUI when they rode their bike drunk into a tree. Okay. So some people, there is no such thing as a bottom. A bottom is death. But let's not buy into that nonsense that you have to be flat out on your back before a bottom happens. Sometimes that happens. But other times you just wake up and you decide to make a choice. You know, David, and that's called a bottom. In my case, rock bottom for Seth was his life, you know, and that's the worst possible outcome. But yeah, you're right. A lot of times you have to hit rock bottom. A couple of things I want to clean up here real quick. Patrick Moore, a good friend of mine, awesome ambassador on the addiction cause. He says, hey, everybody, Patrick's been a guest on my podcast. He is going to be a future guest on the live stream here. He's got this concept with pre-habituation, getting to people before it becomes a habit, ways to identify and empower kids to make better choices. So right down my alley. Kenyon Murray, a great friend of mine, personal friend of mine. He actually says, Danielle, your story is a testament to an inner strength. What was the moment you flipped the switch and started the path you have been on? Good question.
Yeah. A series of abusive relationships in which all of them involved somebody with a addiction way worse than mine. Pills, you know, heroin even. And I got married to a guy briefly that was on heroin, and I ended up leaving because it was out of control. And then he passed away while we were separated. And I think the biggest moment for me was, I guess I just realized, like, either all men, this is what I had in my head, either all men are addicted to drugs and alcohol worse than me, like, and they're abusive, physically abusive, or I'm picking some really shitty men. And so I realized it was definitely the latter. And so I started just looking at myself, like, why am I attracting these kind of men? I'm obviously the kind of girl they want to date. So what does that look like? And I got really honest, painfully honest. And when I looked at that, it kind of led to either there were some harsh judgments that I've had to let go of with myself, but I think at the time it was necessary. And it just got to this point where I either, stepped up, and prior to that moment, I hadn't really looked at myself honestly. But after that, especially after he passed away, it was like, all right, I can't go through this again.
Right.
It was just one heartache after another, and violence, and it was just mess. And I just couldn't go through it again. So it was like, either I change, or I end it, and so I decided to, I'll give it a try. I'll try to change. That's not to say that there haven't been challenges along the way. I definitely, I decided to change. And at the time, the only thing I could think of that I could change was, quit drinking and get a college degree. I had no idea I was going to start my own company, or, do all this stuff I'm doing right now with renewable energy and empowering women in STEM. That at the time, it was just, I need to find a way to earn an income where I don't have to be, putting myself in dangerous situations or depending on abusive men. That was it. Those were the two things that I was trying to overcome. I just need to become financially independent legally. That was it.
Yeah.
And then one thing just kind of led to another. And I just put all of my focus into accomplishing, I need to have a living. I need to make an independent, honest living. And there's a whole lot we could talk about with sex work. That's a topic for another day. But anyway, because I don't want to sound like I'm saying that's not honest work. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. But anyway, I wanted to do it legally. I wanted to be a good role model for my daughter, who, was becoming a young adult. And I certainly didn't have much in my life that I wanted her to do. And so I just, like, I want to be somebody that she can say, my mom did this. I wanted her to feel like she could be proud of me. And I wanted to feel proud of me. And so that just led, and then when I got my 2-year degree, that feeling, just from an engineering associate's degree, but at that time, it was all the math, the Calc 1, 2, and 3, and what's it called? I can't even think of the name. Differential equations. Gosh, it's been a while. But doing all that hard math and getting just an associate's to start was such an accomplishment. That kind of gave me a high to finish my bachelor's. And then I think because I was starting late in life in my career, I wasn't comfortable being where the engineers that were at my level were in their 20s, and I had just turned 40. So I was definitely outperforming. I had a lot of life experience that they didn't have. And so I was able to work my way up pretty quickly. And I didn't know that was going to be a benefit I would have. I thought I had nothing to bring to the table, same as these 20-year-olds, and I'm just old. And no, that wasn't the case. I had a lot of people skills that I developed, even with all my craziness. So that was a really long answer, but it wasn't, I guess it was that first step of saying, this is the thing that I can fix right now, which was, earning an honest living and getting clean. I have the resources to do that right now. And I did that. And then from there, I kind of got addicted to that feeling of how accomplished and proud of myself I felt. And I just kept wanting to step it up, and I continue to do that. That's not to say there aren't challenges. Some days I feel like, why am I doing this? But I have, coping mechanisms now that I didn't have before. So
that's awesome. I appreciate that. that perspective. Justice Cruz says, "Hi, Jeff. Huge fan. I absolutely admire you and everything you do. Keep it up." Now, I have a number of questions here, guys. I'm going to actually jump to Justice's question, then I'll come back to Patrick's and Kenyon's. Justice says, "This is a question for both Danielle and David. What is one piece of advice you would give to a young man or woman on becoming the best person they can be starting at a young age?"
That's so good. Do you want to go? Do you want to go first, David?
Go right ahead, Danielle.
All right. The best piece of advice to becoming the best person you can be. There's a book being written about you. And what do you want it to say? What do you want that next page to say? When you're reading about your hero, your superhero, what do you want it to say? And think about the ending of how it would sound, and then just keep looking at, tomorrow when you're faced with a hard decision, what would you do? Our afraid mind, our negative mind wants to say, why are you can't do that. You're too stupid. You're not good enough. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too old. You're too young. All of that crap. But what would your story say? What would that book say that's written about you after you're gone? What would it say? And then do what aligns with that story. That's what I would tell you.
That's awesome. My son Roman wrote a song in my book called Open Book. And it was the concept that life is just pages and chapters and stories. And so you hit that's a great example of what Roman was trying to capture. So cool. David, what's your thoughts on that? Yeah, I have the audiobook coming out here in about a week or two, and he actually sings it in the audiobook at the end of the book.
Ooh.
Very nice.
Yeah. All right, David, what do you think about that?
I think there's 2 points I would make. Number one is hang around with people that have what you want. That would be my first to a young person. If they're 12, 13, 14, 15, look at who you're hanging around with. And is your social circles filled with people that have things that you don't have that you want? In other words, you may have someone in your circle that's a great athlete. You've always wanted to be more athletic. Start spending more time with them. Maybe there's someone that's really social and you're more of an introvert. Hang around with them. Maybe there's someone who's more of an introvert, but when you get them one-on-one, they can teach you the world. So I would say number one is look at who you're hanging around with and make sure you start going after people that have what you desire. They're already there. They could be a year, 2, 3 years older. It doesn't matter, but that would be tip number one. Number two is, and I know this is going to sound a little weird, maybe if you're 13, 14, or 15, but if you hit 16, 17, or 18, start looking for a mentor. Start looking young for someone who's 25, 30, 35, 40. It doesn't matter, but find someone who can guide you. Do not trust your own age. Your own age is filled with limitations, baby.
That's awesome.
You gotta go to old guys like me. Seriously, like when I look at my mentors, when I first started, all my mentors were 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years older than me, and
me too.
And when I look at what the wisdom that they brought to me, not that I always listen to it, guys. Not that I always followed their advice, but when I look back, I go, oh my God, thank you for Richard Gerson, who's passed away. Thank you for Steve Block, who's passed away. Thank you for Joe Cerulli, who's still in this world kicking royal ass. We got to look at who we're hanging around with. And then, even at our ages, I still have mentors. I will die with mentors. So those would be the 2 tips I'd give for someone that really wants to create a dynamic life.
Well, I have two mentors here tonight. So
likewise. And that's why David is the life coach and author. His answer was so awesome. And I just he made me remember a quote. If you hang around 4 millionaires, you'll be the 5th. If you hang around 4 druggies, you'll be the 5th. Think about that. And while we're talking about changing our lives around and making decisions, critical step for me was not hanging around anybody from my life, from my old life. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody, including family for a time. I during those 5 years that I was in college, I was MIA. And I'm not saying you have to go that extreme, But, you know, for me, there was decades of relationships that were there that were really hard to break away from. So if you're young, you have it a little bit better that you don't have decades. But if you're, you know, if you're hanging around people that are making bad choices, going to jail, you know, not having a future ahead of them, or they're not planning for their future, you're going to do the same thing. We are who we hang around. And somebody said not too long ago, they said to be, so it's scary to be around a mentor, right? We get nervous because we think, oh my gosh, they're so much better than me, but that's what you want. To be uncomfortable is to be in good company. To be uncomfortable is to grow. So if you're not intimidated by your friends, then you need to step your game up.
No, those are absolutely great answers. I wanted to cover something here, Pat, and I'm going to come back to Kenyon. Kenyon has a really good question, but Patrick says, your stories are a good way to raise the bottom for someone else. Great empowerment models. And then he says, if we knew the cause of addiction, would we be able to prevent it? I say yes. But Patrick, previous to that, says, what are good, let's see if I can find it. What are good methods to raise the bottom? Prehab is my answer. And he's kind of the inventor, or the individual that has this prehabilitation. His book's called Prehab, and I would suggest strongly that you read it. It's a whole different way to look at. I'll send you guys both links to it, but it's a whole different way to look at the addiction fight. And one thing I've noticed lately is, you know, there's 14,000 rehab and treatment centers in America. There's 3.7 million people currently in rehab. It's a $50 billion business. But what about the kids? What about prehab? What about the things that are going on before they become addicts? So instead of trying to put out a forest fire with thimbles full of water, why don't we just go back and try to find ways to identify these kids? And Patrick's book talks about the stage 1, 2, 3, 4. And he is going to be a guest here shortly because he's got some great stuff to add. But what would you guys say to that question? What are good methods to raise the bottom?
David, you're up. I can go if you want. I just feel bad because I keep going first.
Oh, that's fine, Danielle. That's fine. But thank you. You know, first of all, I think we have to get, you know, in our work, we define the bottom quite easy. It's a choice. Danielle hit a point where it was a choice. The pain was great enough. The frustration was great enough. The disappointment in herself was great enough that she made a choice. So I think we got to get away from the old 12-step definition of bottoms. You know, we got to get away from the old teachings. And, you know, I think 12-step has a few good points to it, but it's an 80-year-old philosophy that's never been updated, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And I make this analogy every chance I have. If there was an auto dealership that was still working out of file cabinets from 80 years ago, they would be out of business in a heartbeat. You know, 12-step has been around for 80 years. They have never updated their work. We know that you don't have to wait to get a DUI or a divorce or some health crisis to hit a bottom. Come on, guys. We got to educate, and we've got to educate up to today. 12-step has a 10% success rate, for God's sake, a 90% failure rate. Now, if you're a 12-stepper and it works, don't change it.
Right.
As long as you haven't cross-addicted to caffeine, nicotine, some other drug, sex, spending, television, social media, you know, because just overcoming an addiction is not the answer. You've got to make sure you don't cross-addict. You got to make sure, you know, there's so much work in this world to do. But, you know, going to the secondary question just really quickly, and then I'm going to hand it over to Danielle. You know, in our work, we have found it's really easy to find the beginning of all addiction. And all addictions are caused by one thing only: our inability to deal with life and life's emotions. That's the only thing that causes addiction. And unless you're a fetal alcohol baby born addicted to alcohol, unless you're born addicted to opiates, we don't come out as addicts. So that tells us that the environment, the lack of training on how to deal with, in my case, peer pressure. You know, peer pressure is huge. And, you know, the just say no. Come on now. You know, again, it's 2021. We have to go a lot deeper than that. And we need to teach kids coping mechanism, emotional coping mechanisms for sadness, rage, resentment, shame, guilt, insecurity, peer pressure. I mean, that is the crux. If we can get those messages to the kids, we would see a huge drop in addiction, because then they would be in control. In therapy, we call it emotional regulation. That they are actually in control of their emotional response to the world. If you can be in control of your emotional response to the world, the chances of any addiction, television, for God's sake, would be minimized dramatically.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. And I love the idea of prehab. That's super interesting. I think about this a lot well, we live in okay, we're in a global pandemic. The government has just told us that UFOs are real. The planet is ending,
I love it.
and we're supposed to, be able to focus on our job and our health. And we don't even know what we are and why we're here. So it's kind of a lot, right? It's kind of a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And then, add to that, we kind of live in this narcissistic society where parents are narcissistic often, and we're all probably a little bit guilty of it, if not a lot. It's kind of passed down from generation to generation, and we don't know how to regulate our emotions. And that was the number one thing that I had to do was manage my anxiety and learn how to body scan. If I would have learned that when I was a kid, just how to scan my body and feel where the tension is and just breathe. I mean, I just can't even imagine how much that would have saved me. And I'm seeing classes where they are teaching this to children. I wish I would have known about this when my daughter was younger. We talk about it all the time now, but we're trained to disconnect from our body. And I think that's what the addiction kind of comes in, because it makes it easier to disconnect. And then when you do start reconnecting, when you start getting sober, it can kind of feel like, after the pink cloud, it can feel really scary, because now you're dealing with these realities, like what am I even, and why am I here? And just being okay with that is a challenge in itself. So I think teaching kids the power of meditation and
you beat me to it.
Yeah.
Yep. I wanted to hit that, but no, go ahead. That's a great point.
It's so true, and just teaching, where we feel our emotions in our body. It's so connected, and it's silly that we have to, go through these decades of addictions to learn this very, very simple principle.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really am curious to see prehab and what it talks about it in respect to, helping out kids and parents too. Because I think it's kind of the parents, me included. I'm not innocent of this, but we've done narcissistic things to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to tell them to toughen up when someone picks on them at school, or we want them to fight back, or, whatever the case may be, or, push them a little too hard in sports maybe, and tell them, I don't know, whatever it is that we might have done as parents, we can minimize and in gaslight even. So it's interesting, because I think when I started healing, I went through this phase where I was kind of pissed at my parents for a lot of stuff, and like journaling, oh, they did this. But then I realized, like, oh my gosh, I did all that stuff to my daughter. Okay. So now it's all coming full circle. So it's like, all right, I know I didn't know I was doing that when I did that. So I know that I'm sorry, but being able to talk about it and not, fighting and getting emotionally charged is so important. But I think as a society, just sort of, learning how to be compassionate and just being connected to our bodies. The younger, the better.
Those are great answers, guys. I'm just gonna I want to take Patrick right now, because he makes an observation of what we just talked about. Then I'm going to go back to Kenyon real quick. Patrick says the variable you both refer to but failed to name is development, specifically risk response development. This is measurable. And that's where I've read his book twice. He talks a lot about risk response behaviors, and it's enlightening. And I would really suggest that anybody out there is looking for, as I say, an arrow in the quiver. There's no template that says you're going through this. It's like, when our son died, there wasn't just a template that said, when your son dies, this is what you do. There's all these arrows I equipped myself with: meditation, quit drinking, reading, talking about being vulnerable, all these different ways that helped me deal with it. So Patrick, thanks so much for being a part of all the live streams. I cannot wait to get you on. Go back to
I have
Kenyon.
a question.
Yeah.
When he said it's measurable, does he mean measurable as in it happens so much that there's data that he has like charts on it, or like measurable, like I can actually connect a scientific device and measure my emotions?
The first one. He has
Kennesaw That's what I figured, but I was hoping for a really cool scientific invention.
Yeah, at Kennesaw State University is where his research was, and I think there was 5,000 students or something, if I remember right. Cool. But he's got a lot of data for this. This isn't just somebody spouting off on social media. He's got some good stuff. I'm going to go back to Kenyon, one of my great friends. He says, David, my question for you: your journey can be taxing on you mentally and emotionally. What keeps you focused and energized to touch the people you touch? Say as a life coach or a motivational speaker.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's all self-love and self-care. Kenyon, great question. It all comes down to self-love. And, self-love has nothing to do with what you say in the mirror. A la Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. Yeah, it has nothing to do with that at all. So many people say awesome. They love themselves. The way that I keep my energy up is pure self-love, which means what do I do on a daily basis to keep my emotions, spiritual, physical health, energy at the optimum level? And so we share, with our clients. So the first hour of every day, there should be no electronics whatsoever opened up. So when you wake up and you open up your phone, you're already screwed. Sorry to tell you guys, all of us phone addicts, and it's probably about 98% of the US population. But we say no electronics. That means no social media, no text, no email reading, no television, no nothing for the first hour of the day. And in that first hour, a lot of it is me and I are speaking. We're talking. We're going over the day. We're going over how we love each other. It's a very soft opening to the day. I used to jump out of bed, jump to my phone, see who I need to text, and all that kind of crap. And now it's very relaxed. It's extremely relaxed. Meditation, journaling, gratitude, reading something inspirational, not on a computer, like actually grab a book. These are the ways we sell. Exercise, hugely important. So, if you follow self-care and self-love, the question that Kenyon asked, no matter how many hours you work, you can be inspirational. You can be inspired. It's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock Eastern time right now. We could go on until 2 a.m. I know Danielle could. I know you could, Jeff. And it's not because, we're back to our old days of cocaine and all that other, it's because we found a path, and the path is vitalizing us. The path is re-energizing us. Now, even if you're on a path that is filled with energy, you can burn out and you can become a workaholic. So, we've got to find that little, and I don't like the word life balance at all, because that's a ridiculous concept. No one's ever going to balance their life out. There's too many factors. I won't get into it right now, but there's 1,000 factors why you'll never live a balanced life. So don't worry about living a balanced life. Start your day the first hour with you, taking care of you, and you'll watch the rest of your day unfold in a totally different way than it probably is right now.
It's funny you say that. I was listening to a podcast about multitasking, and the individual saying that, nobody that's successful is good at multitasking, because being productive doesn't mean that you're being creative. So you get the laundry done, the dishes, you do all these productive things, like I'm busy, but at the end of the day, you haven't done anything. You haven't created anything. So I think there's some issues in regards to how productivity and multitasking, and for me with ADD, and I know you two have ADD as well. I guarantee you do.
I've never been diagnosed, but I don't disagree.
No, I'll diagnose you right now, and David, you too, both you guys. But it's awesome. It's a freaking superpower to be hyper focused. But the problem is the fact you can become hyper focused, and you can get so into projects that you kind of neglect things around you. So Kenyon said, "Thank you, David. Great point. We need to have the time to center ourselves." Go back to Justice. He's the one that asked about the young man or woman. He says, "Awesome, guys. Thank you for the advice. My dad is watching. My dad's a retired doctor, University of Iowa. one of the greatest. My mom and dad are the greatest mentors in my life. I just absolutely have learned so much. I think they're, I'm going to say 87, 88, but at that point, who's counting, right?
Hi, Justice, and hi, Justice's dad.
But
That's a really cool name, by the way.
Justice, yeah, he's an awesome kid, a nice story in and of itself. But anyway, and then Danielle Allison says the pain of life is greater than the pain from the addiction, and he's the average dude. I think Danielle and David, if you follow LinkedIn, David goes by the average dude. He has great short 1 or 2 minute posts every day that are very kind of like they're my daily affirmations for me. And then let's see. Yeah, Patrick has a lot of stuff in here. I think the reality is I need to get him on board here because I think he can add a lot with this prehab angle. I know it's helped me a ton. So, I guess I want to go back to a couple different things. One of them is when I wrote my book, I came across this idea that I thought was kind of groundbreaking to me, but it's been out there for 20 years. And that's this concept of post-traumatic growth. And we talk so much about post-traumatic stress. It's kind of the sexy term that, you come home from the war and things have you have problems. The next thing you know, they put a label on your forehead, PTSD, or you have a traumatic event like Danielle went through in her teenage years, or myself losing a child. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But what's the antithesis? What's the opposite of PTSD? Well, I stumbled across post-traumatic growth. I'm just wondering, David, you're in the life coach business, in the motivational speaking business. Why is there very little said about things like post-traumatic growth, which basically in a nutshell is, if you're not familiar, it's not resiliency. Post-traumatic growth is your ability after a series of events that have happened and you haven't had the ability to recover. Like Danielle's a good example. She is like the epitome of post-traumatic growth because she had these things happen and she fell, and she had another thing and she fell, and it kind of compounded. And then one day she had growth from these things. So the difference between resiliency is somebody who just always is resilient, kind of Teflon, kind of bulletproof. Danielle wasn't that way for a block of her life. And then she just decided, I'm going to grow. And I'm just wondering why the industry, the mental health industry, doesn't grasp onto that concept more.
I think that one of the answers, Jeff, is that our industry, and, going back when I got my counseling degree in the 80s, what they taught us in school then, we probably used 20% of it in my practice as a counselor today and as a coach and everything else. We were still stuck in terminology from the 70s, 80s. And I don't think that there's a lot of people in the professional world of counseling that are doing work outside of what they've learned. So when you talk about post-traumatic growth, there's no college course on it that I've ever heard of. And it's just like with emotional regulation, and codependency. In our counseling training, no one talked about codependency other than if you're with an addict, you're codependent. That was it. That was all the teaching we had. The whole course was just on one concept. But 40 years later, 42 years later, we realized codependency has 2,000 legs to it. So I think, some of these newer concepts, well, codependency isn't new, but how insidious it is new. How much of we call in 2002, we labeled codependency the largest addiction in the world by far. And it totally is. You cannot see it. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. You can't hold it. It is so tricky. So when we look at post-traumatic stress disorder, it is a really hot topic. It's been a hot topic. It's going to be hotter than anything after the pandemic is over in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years, whenever it does end. I tell, and here's something to go along with that, Jeff, about what you're talking about. We believe that if people don't start living emotionally regulated lives right now with incredible self-care, like the gentleman asked me, what is it that I do? People are waiting for the pandemic to end. It may not end. And I'm not being fatalistic or negative. I'm just being realistic. Everyone said 2021, the pandemic's over. Guess what? It's still here. There's countries shutting down. I have clients in Thailand that can't get back into Thailand because of what happened in a couple months ago when they had this massive outbreak. So what we say is, if you want to be ahead of the game, understand this is never leaving. The pandemic is here for the rest of our lives. Now let's live. And so when we look at post-traumatic growth, I would say, hey, for everyone who right now who's still arguing over politics, the pandemic, the vaccine, and everything else. Grow up. There's no benefit to arguing because no one has the answer. There's too many potential variables for anyone to know when it's going to end, which vaccine is better than the other. So we can actually go, Jeff, into what you're talking about right now by stopping the insanity. You know, post-traumatic growth could be, wow, I've been stressed. I've lost 50 pounds in the last year, or I've gained 150 pounds in the last year. Let me look at my lifestyle. Let me look at the patterns that I've created. And if we stop the patterns now, in 6 months to a year, we'll be absolutely awesome.
I mean, Danielle definitely embodies post-traumatic growth. Now, I guess my original kind of observation was that, you know, if you have a stressful, post-traumatic stressful environment or something happened to you, and you didn't know that there was this thing out there that is equally as labeled as PTSD, it's just post-traumatic growth, and you didn't know about it, well, then you're just going to struggle trying to find a name for recovering and being undeterred and being resilient. You don't have a name for it. And so we just like to put names on things. And that kind of leads me into a question I want to answer from my friend Kenyon. Patrick is kind of blowing up all the messages here. He's got some great stuff in here that I do want to kind of circle back to something he has for Danielle. But Kenyon asks, and I love Kenyon, and I know exactly why he's asking this question, and it's an awesome question. Question for Jeff. When you have a friend who clearly is being guided by something greater than any of us, what would you call that something? And I have to confess, I read this, you know, he posted this 6 minutes ago, so I've had the advantage to think about this. I'll be honest with you. Now this is directed towards me, so I'm going to give you my answer. I am comfortable the English language isn't equipped to explain things that don't have an explanation. It just doesn't. And our language is very ill-equipped to talk about things like transcendence and religious experience people have about things they can't explain. So they put a label. So for me, I'm comfortable saying, I don't know what that something is. I don't want to put a label on it. Now, could it be something that could be, you know, I'm sure. I hate to say the G word, because I think if there is a God, for me, it would be less of a personal God and more of a universal, you know, spirituality type God. That's more likely for me than something that's trying to guide my personal life. I don't know if I would really want that, quite honestly. To me, that would be almost like a celestial bully. And I'm not really sure if I'm equipped to accept that part, but there is something going on. I don't know what the hell it is. I'm so driven on my desire to honor my son, to help myself and to help others. And I'm agnostic. I'll confess, you know, I know where both you two stand, and I love you both equally. And Kenyon, I love him to death as well. And that's the great thing about this whole thing is the beauty that whether or not you are a believer or a still willing to learn, that's what I am. You still, it doesn't preclude you from doing great things in your life. It shouldn't prohibit you from starting a nonprofit or writing a book or being a mentor or coach. And Kenyon, I love you, man. You and I have talked till 3 a.m. on this particular topic, and you are a strong man of God. You have tremendous faith. And I more of us need what you believe in to get through the day. So I appreciate the question. I'm not sure I answered it. I think what I put a bow tie in it for me, guys, is I'm okay not knowing. And I don't really at this stage of my life have to know, but I know something is driving me. Something is more complicated than my feeble little brain. And I'm okay. I am okay saying, I don't know. I don't know.
I love, that was a beautiful answer, Jeff. You know, I like to talk about this topic quite often. I was raised in a very evangelical, speaking in tongues Christian church, and to say I was a victim of spiritual abuse is probably an understatement.
I think you said it was a cult. Was it a cult, Danielle?
I mean, cult-like, but yeah, I mean, but not, I mean, it was still, you know, we worship Jesus, not a person, not a, you know, a leader, but it was definitely had some attributes for sure. And there were some questionable events for sure. Um, but this is my favorite topic to talk about. In my free time, you will find me talking about this topic because I've questioned this since I was a little kid. And, you know, I don't know either, but some days, you know, I might watch a sci-fi movie and like, holy crap, we're made from aliens. They you know, they cloned us and we're some kind of hybrid. And then another day I might be like, oh, you know, there's a intergalactic spiritual war. But it's a fluid, but definitely there's a, obviously, you know, this is so intelligent. The design, the mathematics that go into this universe is so sophisticated, so elegant. So obviously there's something. But I think wanting to know and not being able to know is like kind of what makes it so interesting. I don't know. It's something I could philosophize about for days on end. So I guess just agreeing with you, Jeff. You know, yeah, just agreeing with you that I don't know that any of us know, but if you know that you know, then you know, who am I to take that from somebody?
Right.
To kind of to Kenyon as well. That I think it's great that, you know, people can have tremendous faith, but you know, for me, it's personal because it's not consistent.
Yeah.
It can change depending on what documentary I might see that blows my mind, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that could be it. So
But that's
always willing to learn.
that's your willingness to be willing to, with evidence, change your mind, and that's the beauty of that. But you know, I will say, well, David, why don't you? I want to kind of hear your thoughts on that too, because I know where you stand on this, and you both are doing just absolutely heroic things, and I've met so many people in this journey that I tend to have come to this conclusion, and Kenyon says, "I love you, brother. I had to poke you." But here's how I'll put my ending on this. Then David, you can take this to the top of the hour. But I care less what people believe and more how they behave. That's it. So what you two believe in doesn't interest me. How you two are behaving, you have my admiration.
That's beautifully put, Jeff. You know, I, as a former pastor and current minister, I have this unbelievable connection with God that is non-religious.
Interesting. Explain.
Yeah,
I'm sure you will.
what kind of church do you pastor?
I was a pastor of an all-faith church. So I became an all-faith minister, and I was an all-faith minister for a long time, and then became pastor of an all-faith church.
I can get down with that.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, you know, my sermons would include stories about Buddha, stories about, you know, the 3,000 gods in Hinduism, and I love all the gods in Hinduism. They're amazing. But when I say non-religious God, you know, to me, I have a challenge with a lot of religions because of the shame and guilt that they inject into their congregation. I have a real problem with religion because of the concept of tithing, where most religions teach if you tithe, you'll be in God's favor, which I think is absolutely disgusting. It makes me want to puke. So even though I am, you know, someone who loves religion from a non-religious point of view, meaning there is no dogma that I follow. There's no one that's going to get me to tithe a penny. There's no one that's going to convince me that there is an evil God or a foreboding God. Right. You know, in the Old Testament, they talk about God-fearing men and women. And so when you hear those words and people take it literally, it is so disgusting. Because when I worked with a rabbi as part of my training to become an all-faith minister, I brought that up to him. He said, do you have any questions about the Old Testament? Is there anything that bothers you? I said, hell yes. I go, I don't fear God. If God is love, or the eminence of love, or the spirit of love, or however you want to put it, why would he put us into positions of pain and peril? I'm sorry?
I said, or she.
Or she, right? Exactly. You know, whatever this entity, you know, may be. And it could be anything to anyone. So what I say is create your own personal power, your own personal God, your own personal. But this goes back to mass consciousness, what I said in the beginning. You know, our work is about getting people to become leaders, not followers. Do not become a follower, because once you give up your freedom and you believe 100%, and there's nothing that's 100% accurate, right? And we see that in science. I mean, you guys are, and Danielle, you're much more science-based than I am, but you know, there's theories that destroy all the evidence that was based for the last thousands of years, you know, so it continues to evolve. So create your own higher power. If it's sunset, sunrise, if it's whatever it is that you feel greatly connected to. Read about the Native Americans. Oh my God, they have some of the most deepest spiritual practices ever. A great book, The Dancing Healers by Dr. Karl Hammerschlag, written years ago. It's a perfect introduction to an entity, a God, a something, a force so much greater than us that can help us with our grief, help us celebrate, help us do everything. But you know, the final thing I'm going to say on this is that I believe above and beyond words, that we all really need to work more on faith, which is belief in the yet unseen. And when you believe in the yet unseen, that has nothing to do with religion. If you don't want it to have anything to do with religion, what about yourself? What about honoring yourself? You know, in many of the Eastern practices, there's a word called hamsa, and it's a meditative word that I use every day. And the meaning of it is, I am that. And so, you know, in Genesis, we are made in God's image. Hamsa, in so many of the Vedic words that we hear from Muktananda and Yogananda and all these amazing teachers, you know, they're saying, I am that. You are God.
Yeah.
God resides within all of us. So you don't have to go to a temple, a synagogue, or church unless it feeds your soul to the highest level possible. And you're not being, you know, Danielle or Jeff, you said cult-like, you're not being drugged down into, if you do this, you're going to heaven. If you do this, I don't even believe there's a such thing as hell.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
As a pastor minister, I don't believe in purgatory.
David, have you ever heard of Carlton Pearson?
No.
I want to send you so I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you know, that's the Bible Belt Central. And Carlton Pearson was a really successful pastor there. And he said exactly what you said, and he was part of like the whole ORU network, and Oral Roberts, you know, said it was heresy and kicked him out. But there's a really cool and he does a YouTube channel now. Anyway, I think you would like him. So if it's okay, I want to send you his video. They did a special on him, I think, on like one of the major networks a few years ago. But sorry to interrupt. I was just curious if you've heard of him, because you're reminding me, and he ended up becoming an all-faith pastor as well. Yeah.
You know the beauty to me, and Jeff and Danielle, I'm gonna have to run in about 30 seconds. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
You know, but the beauty of what you're saying, Danielle, is that, you know, we need more people like Carlton. You know, we need more people with a voice that says, hey, there's alternative pathways. I mean, when I decided to become a minister, you know, we have Catholic priests in my family. We have my aunt at 94 died of being a nun since 16. She actually lied to get into the convent. That's a great way to start your religious path, right?
Yeah, that's great.
But, you know, when my mom was alive, she used to tell me stories about her sister, my Aunt Rita, who was the nun. And, you know, at 6, she knew she was going to be a nun for her life. I mean, it was just driven into her. So, you know, I just love when people will broaden and read about other faiths. You know, even though it's going to sound funny, 2 of my favorite books are The Idiot's Guide to World Religions and World Religions for Dummies. I love these books. They go into religions that most people have never heard of.
Right.
And we see, you know, as so many people have said, the similarities.
Yeah.
You know, you can drag the similarities through all religions at some level. And then, of course, we have division. And the division is what creates division and more division. So open our minds, read about other pathways, try new ways. If the food that you're getting from the world you're living in isn't filling your soul, you know, I just told a client today, leave that church. Yeah. Leave it. If there's 50% or 30% or 20% that you don't agree with, that you think is damaging to yourself, your self-esteem, your confidence, your children, whatever, leave it. There's thousands of other ways. And you can also just be you. You can be God yourself. And you can expand your universe by realizing that God resides within you and everyone else. You know, Ram Dass used to have this great saying. He said, everyone is Christ in drag.
That's so good. I love that so much.
Freaking awesome. You know, and I said I was going to be gone in 45 seconds. I'm so sorry. I'm going to steal 30 more seconds.
I have one thing I want to add when you're done.
Okay. I love the homeless. I love looking into the eyes of the homeless. I love talking to them. I love asking them their first name. I love asking them their story, you know, because they share. They have so much to share with us. They're so beautiful souls, you know. So let's get out of that box and let's get uncomfortable and let's radically change the way that we treat others and look at others. And when we do that, we're going to radically change ourselves.
Yeah, I guess I love those points. And whether you inject something from the heavens or inject something from within, it shouldn't matter. And really, religion shouldn't stake claim to the word faith. They don't own that word. And for me, I had faith that the doctor that prescribed Adderall to Seth, that Seth wouldn't get addicted to it. So, you know, faith can have so many different connotations. And I think sometimes that word is used kind of as to weaponize people. But anyway, David, I know you got to go. I love you, brother. Danielle and I will wrap up the last 8 or 9 minutes, but appreciate what you're doing. And a quick shout out. How do people reach you on social media?
Oh, really easy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to offer everyone a special guest because I love a gift because I love Jeff so much. If you go to talkdavid.com, TALK David.com, that's all I do is talk. It's a really easy name to remember. Talkdavid.com. Hit the contact us button. Send a note to my team saying, I saw David on Jeff's show and I'd like a free 20-minute phone session. I'll give as many of your listeners who are serious about change. Now, only if you're serious. Right. If you're kicking tires and going, well, I really don't know if I want to change, pass on me. But if you're serious and you're going, I really want to learn more about X or Y or Z, go to talkdavid.com, hit the contact us button, send us an email. My team will set it up. No matter where you live, we'll do your 20-minute session at no charge. And trust me, we can move mountains in 20 minutes.
Kenyon said, thanks, David. I love that, David. Each person's relationship should be personal and not religious. Religion is what I feel has destroyed the true spirituality that we should have with God. So with that, thank you very much, brother. I love you.
Okay. Love you guys. See ya.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Same here, Danielle.
Awesome guy, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, that was, I didn't know he was a minister. That was really interesting. We could get into some very crazy conversations about.
Well, I took, you know, I have this much stacks of rough drafts in my book. I took religion out of my book because at some point I got half my book talking about this because it's always been something I have been just perplexed that people assume that I couldn't be doing what I'm doing unless I had been driven by something from the heavens. And I have never had a reason to inject God in my life. And that sounds odd because I've been down, I've been suicidal ideation, I've lost a child, lost a marriage. I mean, I have the list of all the things that I'm a broken man. Somebody save me. I've just never felt broken. I've never felt the need for an assistance from something that was outside of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you just nailed it. I was going to say, I've felt broken so many times, but I've realized in all of that brokenness that I was the savior. And it was up to me, like realizing in fact, when somebody asked earlier, what was that moment that I changed things around? It was the moment I said to myself, nobody is coming to save you.
Yeah. And
that was a big thing for me. So, hey, maybe that was God working behind the scenes. Who knows? But either way, it was, you know, I realized that. And I think that's what we're afraid of, is realizing that we do have the power. Sometimes it's easier to kind of default to an external source than to do that inner work, because inner work can be ugly sometimes. But
it's awesome. Just the aspect of learning has been exciting. And I guess that's probably the fun part about being my age and knowing that I don't know the answers to most of these things is I got excitement to keep learning. And if I knew the answer already, what the hell would I do? What the hell would I do if I already knew the answer to everything? I almost like don't want to know the answer to these questions. Like the UFO thing. I laughed. I'm like, That's going to be a bummer if they exist, because I kind of like hunting for Bigfoot, but not actually finding him.
It's so true. Oh, that's
Hey,
so funny.
Patty Snyder says, I admire all of your vulnerability and sharing your stories. When you all made your decisions to become so open and sharing your stories, did you ever second guess sharing so publicly? I'll go first, Danielle. We have about 4 minutes. I did. I struggled with it immensely. The year after Seth died, I drank myself to death. I never had a gun in my head, but I knew where the gun was. I knew where the bullets were. I just didn't have the courage, I guess, to kill myself, if that makes any sense. But nonetheless, I didn't. And I found something that clicked. And it started with me just stopping drinking. And then things just started coming into order. So that's how I kind of, my first step was my drinking.
Yeah. Absolutely. I second guessed it for years, for many years. And the only regret I had when I went public with my story was that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
I had told myself so many ridiculous things that I thought were going to happen to me, and none of them happened. So yeah, I second guessed it a lot, and it was like just this weight on my back that kind of would never go away.
Yeah, it's awesome to kind of let it off, just get it off your shoulders, but then hey, I just opened up the door. I better be able to deal with it.
Yeah. And that is, that's true. You don't want to do it too soon until you're ready. And I think David was saying that earlier about kind of sitting with your healing for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I sort of did that without knowing that I should do that. So I'm glad that I didn't, do it too soon. So maybe second guessing for a little bit is maybe good. I don't know. Maybe it's good for.
Oh, it's definitely good. It's definitely good.
Make sure that you're ready.
I've second guessed all the way through everything I've ever done. My book, I second guessed. The live stream, I second guessed. I mean, if everyone just gave me the answers to everything, what the hell reason would I have to live for? I mean,
right.
Patrick Moore says the important thing about a higher power is that I am not him or her.
Yes.
I second that. Maria asks, hi, Jeff. Not sure if I'm too late. You're never too late, Maria. Thanks for jumping on. I've enjoyed knowing you on LinkedIn, and this is going to be broadcasted shortly. So whatever you did miss, you can definitely catch. Kenyon says, you're a blessing, Jeff, every day. Justice says, thank you, David. And then Kenyon says, thank you, Danielle. Continue blessing this world with your light. Danielle, you are awesome. I am honored to meet you. I have a very big, huge project I'm working on.
I can't wait to hear
I know,
this.
and I'm going to drag you in on it. So,
okay.
But I'm going to have to talk to you off air sometime shortly. But it's not till next year. I got a lot of time to plan for this, but it's awesome, and it's going to bring in everybody I've ever met on social media and how we're gonna make a dent in this problem.
Exciting! I can't wait to hear more. I'm always happy to support you in any way, Jeff. I'm really looking forward to finding out more.
So about a minute. How do we find Danielle? What's the best way to reach you, and how do we support you in your cause and your organization? How about your website of your company?
Yeah. So, well, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me. Our company, we're working on, I'm just going to say flying cars. I would actually encourage you. In fact, I'm going to refer you to a friend of mine's website called Flight Crowd, FLIGHT-crowd. And the reason I'm telling you to go to her website is because she focuses on some of the introductory to getting involved in this space. So I'm just going to tell you, your listeners, you guys, flying cars are the future. It's real. They're coming. They're here. And we're not going to go buy them like at the dealership, but they'll be autonomous and probably start out with a pilot. But you'll be able to get on your phone and order basically a giant drone that will come pick you up and take you over. They're here. I've been in them. It's real. And they're all electric and they're good for the environment and all that good stuff. Now, right now, it's really heavy in the engineering side. So unless you're an engineer, a lot of what I would share with you probably wouldn't mean much. I
got about 30 seconds, Danielle.
Oh, is it just going to end? Okay. Yeah. Flight Crowd will give you terms that you don't have to be an engineer to learn about this industry. So just go to Flight Crowd and start there.
And anyone follows me, I have all your information. People can reach out to you. Again, your story is awesome. You're a great inspiration. I've got to know you so much about everything else. I want to hear about your business and your future. We don't spend time talking about that. Yeah, I'll definitely get you back on. But you're awesome. Appreciate it again. And for those people that would like to support my cause, go to livingundeterred.com, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, like me, share me, talk about us. And again, the big project in 30 days, I'm going to be announcing it. So Danielle, have a great evening. Thank you very much. And keep living undeterred. Okay.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
All right.
Thanks,
have a great
everybody.
night. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it very much.